Hey guys, how's it going? This is Luke here with Dad Life Chess. I have a couple game review games I really want to get to, but I haven't had a chance to really look at them. And a couple days have passed here, so instead, I'm just going to jump into chess.com here and do a training game just so that I'm regularly playing some of these longer games. And then hopefully, I'll have a chance the next couple days to take a look at those games over the board from the chess club and do a little bit of analysis on those. But today, we're playing Inspiration NL. He's a 1770 rated player. And let's see what we get with him. It's been a good couple weeks at the chess club. I went 3 for 3 2 weeks ago. First time that I've gone 3 for 3 in months of going. Um, and then last night I was so close. I was 2 out of 3 last night, and the third game I really should have won. I was winning at multiple points in the game, had a really good position out of the opening, and I just made a mistake. So a few mistakes actually, and did not keep my advantage. So that's probably the game I should look at from this week if I get a chance, just to learn from my mistakes and figure out what happened. But yeah, it's been a good couple weeks playing, and I feel like I've gotten my bearings playing over the board. I'm sure there'll be some rough stretches. I would not be surprised if next week or the week after I lose all my games. It could definitely happen. I'm not over some kind of hill where I'm never gonna have that happen, but it it feels good to get comfortable playing over the board, and that was not there when I first started going to the chess club. It literally felt like I was learning a brand new game. Just seeing the pieces. Those of you who play online, you already know this. The board flat in front of you on the screen, it just doesn't look the same. I know that's obvious, but when you make the switch, I think most people play over the board for a long time first, and then they switch to playing on computer. And I think that switch is probably easier than going the other direction to playing primarily on over the on the computer, excuse me, and then switching to over the board. I have a feeling that that's probably an easier switch. All right, so my opponent, yeah, even here. So the move before, he really, it would have been a bad idea to take. I mean, takes before this bishop is on b7, and then I take with the queen, and I'm threatening mate. This pawn isn't defended, so he can't play f5 like maybe you would want to stop that. So here though, he is threatening to take. I'm not down pieces. We would just be a big exchange. I think I'm probably better there, but I'm wondering if I should consider the push here. Other moves would be possibly knight h2, looking to push f4. You got to really be careful with that push. This diagonal becomes an issue later if it does open up. So I'm wondering if I maybe, sorry about that, I'm wondering if I should maybe push first and then prepare the f4 push. I feel like that might be better. Right now, this bishop is just, obviously miserable. Has nowhere to go, no no future in sight. This knight doesn't have a lot of happy squares to go to, and even if he goes here, there's nowhere after that. So I like the idea that with this closing up the position, it's not just getting this knight to move, which is part of it. I'm just locking up these pieces and really shutting them out of the game. I, I imagine he wants to open things up here. Okay, yeah, that also works. Maybe knight f8. All right, so obviously I'm just considering continuing my push here. Maybe with that move, he's angling for something like this. So knight g6, I would just push instead, my opponent plays queen b6. What is the point of that? I guess if I push, he's threatening. He's not really threatening to take here. I mean, this pawn is pinned to my king. But even here, if I move here, takes... I can take with the bishop or the rook. And I still have two pieces here. So... Oh, I have to remember, though, this pawn is gone. So takes... Let's just say bishop takes. Takes, and I can't take back with the queen, because I'll lose the piece, obviously, and this pawn is pinned. Yeah, that actually looks like a good move from my opponent. So maybe I just need to sidestep. Renewing the threat here of playing f5. Takes. The push is not an issue. If he pushes, takes, that's fine. I'll probably even take with the knight. But taking here might be a little more awkward. Getting really low on time. All right. If I take back, he can get his queen in here. That's the issue that I'm seeing. But I think I could just back up my bishop. And I don't see an immediate problem there. I don't have a lot of time to calculate this, so I play the chess club. We play game 20, so 20 minutes instead of 10, and I have a hard time adjusting when I come back to, oh, this pawn is falling. Yeah. Did not notice that. All right, let's go here. I'll let him take the pawn on a2. I don't want to trade queens at this point. I'm trying to get an attack here. So I am going to take with the rook if my opponent takes on f5. Then try to double up on the f file and get some pressure on f7. So here I'm threatening to win the queen if he doesn't do something. This discovery with the bishop would be an issue. My rook wasn't really doing anything here on e1, and I'm just anticipating needing to get this, to keep this pawn defended. Down a pawn, and then these are doubled. So really my only chance here of getting making significant progress here would be an attack. And so I need to orchestrate this. Let's see. So queen e3. Can't really push because my queen gets in there. And if he pushes g5, oof, that's looking really dangerous. There's got to be options for me, even just moving directly back. So let's say g5. And then I go e2, looking like I'm threatening here. Okay, that's what I was kind of thinking. So now in this case, I'm going to go here. And I'm going to renew the threat of taking on g2. Okay. Well, we're definitely going to do that. I don't think he saw that his queen was going to be lost there. But even before that, I'm curious. We'll take a look at this game in more detail. Let's see. So this is fine. My understanding of playing against the London is that it's almost never a good idea to play c4. And I say almost never because obviously I'm sure there's places where it's fine. And actually, I think I wasn't worried about it because of that. But because I haven't played knight d2 yet, I'll look at the engine. I'm pretty sure queen b6 here is really awkward to deal with already because he's pressuring b2, and I'm not really in a position to unwind and cover everything easily. In fact, I don't even know what I would do in this case if he played queen b6. I guess maybe b4 is possible. Takes en passant. I can just take with my bishop or even with the pawn. So maybe that's a way out. Maybe it's not completely like a terrible position, but I know that normally that push is bad, but it does force this bishop back to a place here. And if I try to get my knight out later, this bishop is no longer defended by my queen. So if he takes here, for example, it just gets really awkward. I can't defend with my rook on c1 because he just takes the rook. I haven't castled yet, so I probably played this incorrectly. When I saw him play a6, I was very happy because I was able to get my knight into the game here. And then I mentioned at this point here, often in blitz and bullet, doesn't happen as much in over the board games, but this kind of sequence of taking, takes, I think I did it out of order, sorry. Takes, knight takes, queen takes, and now I'm on the rook in the corner, and I'm also threatening mate on h2. So I know that's a pretty common issue if you try to take too early with this push, so I think it was good of my opponent not to. I also would be curious here. So he's still not threatening to take for that same reason, but normally the rook e8 move is aimed at this push, which I think he actually probably should have done here. Maybe developing the bishop was smart, and obviously I pushed on the next move to prevent it. But I wonder even if here, I wonder if e5 would have been a good move. Takes. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, it's not like completely winning, but I feel like opening up that file probably would have been better because what ended up happening in the game is once I played e5, his pieces, his knight and his bishop over here just looked really unhappy. And even this other knight is kind of forced to find a new home. You can't go here, probably, at least not long term. In this case, if he tries to go here, I'm actually just moving my knight and pushing him out anyway with f4, which I played in the game. So I think it's just difficult for him to unwind. When he played the queen over here, I didn't notice at first why, and then I think what was happening here is if I tried to push, takes, and let's just say, actually taking with the rook there would have fixed some of the problems that I was talking about. But let's just say I do what I was going to do in the game, which was takes, take with the bishop. Then I think we have issues on e5 because takes before I move my king. This is I'm one move ahead, but when my king was on g1, this pawn was pinned, so he could have actually taken with his knight, and since my queen is here, I can't take back without losing the queen to the rook. So that would have been really awkward. I didn't see it right away until I looked more carefully at it, but now that I look at it in analysis, I think even taking with the rook on f5 would have helped to, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could even think about playing g6 there and pushing that rook back, and then the threat is renewed immediately to be able to take that pawn. So in any case, I didn't want to deal with those complications, so I moved the king. He pushed to b4, pawn b4. I wasn't worried about the push here, but I knew that he was going to take here, and I think I had a couple options at this point once he takes. Right here. I was considering initially at first dropping my bishop back to b1, covering this pawn, and then this pawn would drop. But then I realized this whole chain of pawns becomes a problem. And I mean, I can defend it, you know, even knight here defends these two, but this pawn eventually gets passed, and I just didn't want to deal with those complications. I'd prefer that he take this pawn. This pawn is on an a6 is still quite a ways away from queening. I was hoping to get an attack before then. So we'll look at this and see if I played this accurately. He took here. I'm already threatening that tactic that eventually ended up happening in the game. Bishop check, and then he loses his queen. I don't know that he did this intentionally, but he played g6. Probably not. He probably just didn't want to deal with me taking there and dealing with that, you know, that being opened up. So maybe he didn't even see the tactic yet, but I defended my bishop. The point of this move was that I wanted to be able to move my queen, for example, to here like I did in the game and still have this piece defended. He defends. I move back to d2 this time so that he can't just repeat and go back here without losing this pawn. And then this is where my opponent made the blunder. I knew this is what he was aiming for, you know, trying to get the rook in here, for example. Maybe even eventually threatening to take, but this just falls to the tactic that happened in the game. And then my opponent resigned. So we'll take a look at the analysis and see if there's anything else to be learned or if anything else was missed. All right, I did a little bit of adjustment on the analysis board here. Let's make sure everything's showing up correctly. Yeah, it looks good. All right, first let's look at the overview. Okay, 77% accuracy for me, 28% for my opponent. Looks like I had some missed wins. Those will be interesting to look at. And then 2 mistakes that I can also look at. Wow, 3 missed wins. That's not good when you miss easy wins in the game. So we'll take a look at where those happened. All right, let's take a look at openings. And Joel usually does this on his videos, and that's usually helpful to kind of see where you deviate from opening theory. Okay, so this move, Queen e2, there are no games here at this point. Let's see what the most natural move. Yeah, the knight bd2. So I mentioned this in the analysis that getting this knight to d2 just prevents issues later on with the queen coming out here. It's a very common kind of sharp lines that happen against the London. So that makes sense that that would be the standard move. I did not play that. Instead, I played queen e2, and it's not a problem. The computer doesn't mark it as a mistake, but it is where we deviate from theory. Okay, I wonder what happens here. Let's just run through this really quick. What happens if my opponent plays queen b6? Inaccuracy. Okay, just because of b3. So I guess I shouldn't have been as worried about that. I mentioned possibly b4, but it looks like even just b3 is fine. C takes. Yeah, and then pawn takes. Okay, so there's nothing to fear there. It looks like a6 was actually the better move, which is what my opponent played. I did eventually play knight bd2, b5 castles, and then I mentioned that this commonly happens in bold and blitz. I shouldn't expect it to happen over the board, but just to illustrate something like this. Well, that's actually best. This is where the blunder would take place. So if they do take again here, then I take with the queen, and I'm on both the rook on a8 and then threatening mate. So he's going to lose a piece. Let me just back up one here. Instead of taking here, all this is fine. They just need to play bishop b7. Okay. Bishop b7, just forcing me to make a decision. Or we trade pieces. Looks like the best move is just a4. So anyway, just something to think about there. That is kind of a tactic that happens sometimes in the London. If you kind of turn off your brain and stop thinking about the moves you're making and just make too many trades, you can find yourself in trouble here on this e4 with this e4 push, the pawn push. And instead of that, my opponent, let me make sure I'm not missing. Yeah, so we have the e4 push in the London is a pretty key move. There are times where you can get it in and it's great for you. And then there are times where it can cause problems too, especially if you haven't castled yet. But it looks like here it was fine. And here is my first missed win. Wow. Okay. So rook ae1 was a problem. Instead, I have a pretty significant advantage if I just push now. I guess that makes sense. That's a move that I was already anticipating next. Let's see. Let's play the line here. Knight g4. Knight e4. Wow. No. I always get confused with this first line here. Sorry, I don't know why that shows. The first line always shows differently than the lines underneath. So knight h4, that makes more sense. Knight h4, revealing the attack here on the knight. f5. Take en passant. Knight takes. Oh, I was thinking queen takes, but apparently that's a problem. What's better here? f4. Just clamping down here on this pawn. Okay, so not a direct immediate win of material, but it looks like in this case pushing e5 earlier would have been better. Instead, I played the rook over to e1. My opponent played bishop b7. And again, I think the problem here is they're wanting the same move, e5, which I did play here. And I mentioned in the game, I think at this point, it's giving a +2, 2.5 advantage, and that's just because black's pieces just look really cramped, and there's no future, no easy plans to figure out how to get them in the game. Meanwhile, I mean, literally all of my pieces are aimed, over here where all the action is on the king side. Queen b6 was a mistake. And it looks like I'll have another learning moment here for me. So king h1 was a mistake. Instead of worrying about this pin pawn here, I should have played queen h5. Okay. Now it's saying it's a good move, not a great move. What am I missing here? Yeah, queen h5. Knight g6. Even just bishop takes is fine. Oh, sorry about that. Or knight g4. Probably threatening even some discoveries or some sacrifices on h6. Yeah, I could definitely see how this would be pretty powerful. Instead, I moved my king out of the way just to avoid the issues with the push pawn here, and my opponent played b4. I make the break on f5, takes. Queen b2 was a mistake. Knight xc4. Wow. That's not a move that I saw. So let's just say d takes. What's the danger here? F takes. And if the queen doesn't move, we have that exact same tactic that happened in the game. So actually at this point, this piece essentially is falling because the queen has to move in order to not be lost. Huh. That's really interesting. I saw later on that there was this tactic with the queen, but I did not notice it here. So even as early as right here, I could have already lined up some tactics by uncovering this pin. Interesting. Okay. Well, I played here, still +2 and 2.5, so I'm still got a good position here. Just missed probably a better move. The queen takes. Oh, we have the same tactic. I missed it again. So I was aware of this tactic later once that line opened up, but I did not see that already here. Like, why couldn't I just do it again here? Yeah. Takes on e6, threatening this knight. And I'm threatening on the next move this exact same tactic. So, like, let's just say he moves his knight. I don't know where you want to put the knight. Nowhere fun. But let's say, just for sake of example here, then I think we have this same tactic happening again. And interestingly enough, it's not even the best move, but it's just a, obviously a loss of a queen and completely winning. So f6 was fine. It wasn't a mistake or anything, but I just did not notice that tactic was there until after I moved that pawn on the f-file. Queen e3, going after that pawn. My opponent plays king h7, and I had a better move here. This is my other missed win, so instead I should have played as a mate in 3 with knight g4. Okay, this will be fun. So knight g4. My first thought, you can't push the pawn because my bishop is on that diagonal. So, wow, he has to just leave it. There's literally nothing he can do. He can't push it, or we have check and then mate. There's literally no response here. Wow, yeah, mate in 3. That was definitely a missed opportunity for me. And I knew I was winning at this point. I just didn't notice the tactics that were sitting right in front of me there on that h-file. I think what I missed in the game was that this pawn was pinned. So I thought, any kind of attack with this knight would just be met by g5. And obviously that's not possible with the bishop here on c2. So instead, my opponent, I played my queen back, again, setting up that tactic that I knew was available. My opponent played rook b8. And even here, the best move is knight g4. So I thought the best move here was winning the queen, but it turns out mate in 3 is better than winning the queen. As attractive as it is to win a free queen, or not a free queen, a queen for a bishop, it's not as good as winning the game. So note to self. Don't pass up a mate in 3 for a queen. And I just didn't even look. This is probably something that's going to be hard for a beginner like me to do. When you see that you can win the queen, it's hard to see anything else on the board. But in this case, there was clearly a better move that I missed. So it takes, and then my opponent resigns. Ironically, my opponent resigns when the computer says I missed a win, and they mark it as a mistake. But obviously, you don't want to play on if you're down your queen. So interesting game. Definitely some things for me to learn. I think the main takeaways for me are just being aware of a tactic. That tactic that I noticed later. So there are some things here. I guess right around this point, I should have already been aware that push was good for me. I probably waited a move too long to lock things up here and make these pieces really unhappy. And then the other thing that I noticed that I'm learning here is that after making these pushes at this point, I needed to stop here and just be aware of the tactics down this diagonal. I saw it later, but already, just probably even just with a little bit of time, I probably could have seen that there were some pretty dangerous lines for him involving taking here. And the key is that when I take here, I'm on this knight. So there's not time for him to move the queen or take a pawn or something because I'm threatening that knight. And then already there's lines opened up towards the king for that tactic. So, and then I think the third lesson would just be, even when I have a really good option like winning the queen, I need to be aware of better moves. And this is totally just something I missed. This knight G4 threatening mate in 3 was not even on my radar. So that was definitely a miss on my point, and tactically just did not stay alert to the possibilities there on the king side. I knew I had a strong attack. I wasn't worried about losing the pawn on A2 because I knew I had a strong attack going. I just missed the winning move there to bring it home cleanly. And still a good win. I'm happy to get the win. And we'll pick it up again, try another game maybe here later on this week. Thanks for watching.